Good afternoon and welcome to this short webinar or a community exchange, community dialogue event where we try to connect the SAP at SMS and the SAP at AOM communities. And this webinar is moderated by Matthias, and also Violetta wanted to join. Unfortunately, she can't today, but sends, of course, warm regards. And I give the word to Matthias.
Thank you very much, Milena. Thank you very much also for doing the groundwork of getting this session started, which I really I'm really looking forward to. And this is why we have these apparently two communities. I think to a great extent there are actually one. There's actually a strong overlap between the communities, but to a great extent we still treat them as two communities. And the question is how we can actually join forces in one way or the other when moving forward. So this is also why, if you look at the team constellation here, Milena from the University of Innsbruck is well established at the AOM community as member of the social media committee, and I think many know her very well because of her active engagement. Then Violetta from the University of Zurich is currently Associate Program Chair at SMS, but she also knows the AOM community very well because she's had several roles there as well, including being the membership chair. And I happen to be in a dual role, basically, on the one side at SMS being the chair, and on the other side at AOM being the PDW chair. So for that reason, we do have a kind of sense of what the two communities that might actually be one are all about. But perhaps we can actually explore and elaborate further connections and further ways to move forward together. This is why the guiding questions for our community exchange, as we call it, are the following. What connects both communities, but how do they differ perhaps, and how can we support each other as we move forward? So this is kind of the overarching theme for this session. And to elaborate those types of questions, we have three wonderful panelists for today, and again, they reflect their interest or their engagement in different communities, partly overlapping, partly with a stronger focus. So Madalina Pop from Aarhus University is currently rep at large at AOM, and again, I think many people know her from her active engagement in that community. Tania Räcker from the University of Zurich is currently membership chair at AOM. At the AOM group, but she's also rep at large at SMS, at the SMS group. And so also, I think, quite well known for her engagement in both groups. And then Stanske is currently community officer at SMS, I think also well established at this group, and for that reason, also well positioned to provide us with insights and perspectives on what these groups are all about and how we could join forces at that point. Without further ado, I would suggest that we hand over to our panelists to share their insights and their points of view on the three guiding questions, or some related stories that they would like to share and that they would like to tell. As you can see from that constellation here, we might have a stronger focus on AOM, a stronger focus on AOM and SMS as a kind of boundary spanner, and a stronger focus on SMS here in that constellation. I would suggest that we start with Madalina from that AOM position, then move forward with Sarah sharing that SMS position, and then concluding with Tania, who might be the boundary spanner that brings the positions together. Let's see how that goes and how this idea will eventually come about. But Madalina,
yeah.
How about going next with you?
Yeah. So the first guiding question was, okay, so what connects the both communities? And I would say that A lot. When I started up as a PhD, and very actually until very late, actually, I did not know there were different communities. I would not have conceptualized them as different communities, for the simple fact that not only a lot of the people actually go to both and are taking active part in helping and supporting both communities, but also because from my perspective there were a lot of the times just simply two venues. So because of that, it's basically I would have conceptualized it, and still do most of the time, as a wider strategy as practice community that has a very strong sense of identity, and that identity is actually, from my perspective, a lot around, of course, strategy, about taking a practice perspective. So a lot of the research elements around having a very focused element around qualitative methods and all of that stuff, but also the way that people actually engage in these conferences. So across conferences, I think you see a similar style of engagements of, for example, very senior scholars taking a very active role in helping juniors, and have everybody being very open and very supportive of each other. But also, on the other hand, juniors being highly encouraged to take a very active role in supporting the community as well. So I think if I am to take the first question, that would be my 2 cents around it. I don't know, should I take the rest of it as well, or okay, so on the difference side, if we are to talk about differences, I think there are a couple of things. So one of the things that that is around difference is that for AOM, it's a lot about the future of the strategy as practice community. So how do we figure out where to go next as a larger community in our research, in the way that we do things in itself, but also connecting to other communities. So going beyond just strategy, to other elements around management, around entrepreneurship, around public administration, around all of these elements that go much, that we try a lot not to restrict ourselves to strategy, but connect to the wider elements. And so that's around the research, and the type of papers that are highly accepted and recommended to submit there. But when we talk about the other activities, I think the AOM community really works a lot to support beyond the AOM conference, the everybody involved. So this includes a lot of, for example, coffee circles online and reading clubs, and on top of this, a lot of support financially for early career scholars to come to the to be part of the AOM, and so on. So there's a lot of things to support the especially early career scholars. Yes. And I think that should I take the third question as well, or should we take that as a joint group? Okay, I'll take the third question as well. Then for the third question, I was so I do see all of us as a bigger community. So because of that, I do see a lot of potential in helping each other, first of all, with marketing, using the wider social media channels, for example, to connect with each other and do joint marketing. Well, to some extent, I think we try to do that as much as possible, but much more of that. And I think also a lot more could be done to do additional smaller conferences jointly that go beyond SMS and AOM, supporting the both communities at the same time. So conferences, in smaller mini conferences for the SAP community, or mini workshops, if you want to call it like that, that that are maybe more sustainable from one perspective or another, but definitely probably cheaper for everyone involved. Yeah, it's using all of the again, all of the social media, and also continuing, I think, to support each other at all stages of our career, from early, middle to of course top, across the different communities, if you call it like that. I think that's my 2 cents on it. Shortly, and then we can have a more informed and interesting discussion without just me babbling.
Thank you so much, Madalina. That was eye-opening and certainly inspiring. Are there any clarification questions from anyone? Anyone would like to ask briefly about things that might have been unclear? Just perhaps one question from my side, in terms of supporting each other, supporting scholars from our broader community at different stages. Did I get it correctly that you would also suggest having more of those joint events, which both AOM and SMS become active at the same time simultaneously?
I would say so. I think that's one of the main elements that would be highly supportive, because and that joint event can be at the conferences in itself. So at the SMS, we could do AOM meets SMS, and the other way around, at the minimum social events, right? But I would say even outside of the conferences, jointly sponsoring events, so that we can throughout the year, not only during the summer, get support on paper development, get support on all aspects of our careers. I think that is always helpful.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That will be an interesting outlook, definitely. Great. If there are no further questions, I would hand over to Sarah and ask her to share her views on the questions of interest.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay, perfect. So thanks again for having me here. So I take the SMS perspective today. And first of all, I want to say thank you to Marlena, because I think I definitely agree with most of the points that she said. So first, the first question was about what connects both communities. And I feel that the most important thing, what connects us, is our interest in research into how strategy is actually done by actors. So we share the same research interests. And furthermore, maybe another important point, especially for more junior scholars who, of course, want to publish as well in high-tier journals. Well, you have with the AOM, of course, the Academy of Management Journal, but with the SMS, we have the Strategic Management Journal, which is also very highly ranked. And we also publish top-tier strategy practice articles. So one of the latest is, I take a closer look at here, my notes here, by Vara and Fritsch from 2022. So there's also an outlet here to publish strategy as practice. So you might this outlet. And these are the greatest similarities. So it's a great community. We have a very strong identity. We are very keen on our research interests, like the actors' perspective. And we have top-tier outlets on both sides. I think this is a great starting point. Concerning the differences, well, I think one of the greatest differences is, of course, the size of the interest group members. So with the AOM is, of course, much larger. At the SMS, it's more like, almost like a family. We know each other personally. We have these little small events at the conference, which is really, really nice. Of course, at the Academy, there are many more things happening, and many more scholars are attending there. But again, at SMS, we are smaller, and here you can also have the chance, if you really want to do something, come to the SMS. We need your help, and we are sure to find a place for you to really live up your ideas. And so you can always come with us to ideas and fulfill them, and hopefully at SMS. Oh, and another thing about the similarities, which I forgot to mention, is not only about the top tier outlets that both share, but also the scholars. So for example, at SMS, I saw that at Langley, actually registered for the conference as well this year. So you have a very high chance of seeing and meeting in person, hopefully, top tier scholars at both outlets, at both conferences, at both interest groups. Coming back to the differences, the size, of course, is one of the most important differences to be mentioned. And we are still in development, I have to say. The academy is, of course, the big example to which we often look and see, okay, what do they have? The academy had, for example, fireside chats for a long time. And we started as well with this initiative last year. And we thought it was a huge success. So, of course, we are still in development, but we try to keep up and keep members engaged and offer even more activities over the next years. Hopefully, we're planning. So if you have also any interesting ideas, please feel free to simply share them with me. And I will also come back to the third question now. It's about how we can support each other. And I think there were also already some great points mentioned, namely maybe even workshops together, so paper development workshops, and we can provide feedback to each other. Maybe we can even have mentorship programs. We're doing that already with the SMS. Maybe we can be more inclusive here and simply say, okay, we are all focusing on the same research interests, so why not have a shared mentoring program? There are also some great initiatives such as AOM meets EGOS, so we could have something like AOM meets SMS, so we could plan something for that. And another great point, which we already discussed shortly before that workshop here, was to join forces to be globally more inclusive. So that's what Madalina already pointed out very briefly with these mini conferences that we had. So with the SMS, we are currently thinking about ambassadors, for example, so really trying to be more inclusive of the different continents as well. And maybe we can join even forces to make the research community, so not the SMS or the AOM, but the research communities more inclusive and having these online meetings maybe, because of course this is cheaper for everybody, and let also other scholars who have otherwise not the possibilities to come to our venues to participate as well in our discussions that we have normally offline. Yeah, so that would be my ideas. Thank you very much. And if you have questions, please feel free to post them now.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Again, that was also very insightful, very inspiring. Are there any follow-up questions or for clarification that you would like to ask Sarah?
Yeah, I would have a question because I've never attended SMS, and you've just said that it is size-wise quite a difference to AOM. Can you drop some numbers maybe so that we get an understanding of how many people would we meet there, for example? And second question would be, I imagine that every one of us has been a very young scholar once in the first or second year. And imagine you would need to decide which conference to go first with a very limited budget. What are the advantages and disadvantages of going, for example, to the one or the other, if I can only go to one? But maybe we can also keep this question to Tania, who has attended both, and I guess you also attended both. Yeah.
So do you want me to answer the question, or do you want to?
The first one, definitely. Okay. Can you drop some numbers? How can I?
Yes. So I researched actually before the meeting. So for the AOM, it's 652 members in the in this interest group. Matthias, do we have any recent number for our for the SMS IG?
I don't have them memorized, unfortunately, but I think it's about 250. So we have about 250 members in our IG at SMS. Yeah,
and also it always depends, of course, how many people are coming. We already had discussion this interest group about strategy as practice. Madalina had said that it's pretty European focused. So depending on where the SMS conference is going, so actually there's always a change, right? 1 year in the US, 1 year in Europe. And I think this might be an advantage, especially for European PhD students, that you don't have to fly across the Atlantic to attend a conference. So depending on where the conference is well based, of course, then we have a different number of submissions. But we are increasing actually in submissions. Yeah, and maybe we can also go deeper with the last question with Tania.
Thank you very much. And I have to admit that I was wondering what I can still add to the discussion, because Madalina and Sarah already mentioned so many great points. But I will also try to say a little bit about each of the questions we had, and then maybe at the end respond to your question, Milena. Which conference a first or second year PhD student should consider attending. So starting with the first question, what connects with communities? So generally I have to say, for me, it's one community. It's one strategy as practice community. And the differentiation that we bring in really, for me, comes only from the conference outlets that we have, which in this call are SAP at AOM and SAP at SMS. But as Madalina and Sarah also already mentioned, in a sense, the core is this one strategy as practice community, which originated around this interest in qualitative research about strategy and in researching, strategizing practices. And today, it's maybe a little bit different, which I will say in a minute, but I think that's the essence, that's where it came from. And then out of this interest, the originators of SAP decided to, okay, in order to advance the standing of strategy as practice, we have to be present at the main conferences. And that's how SAP at AOM, SAP at SMS, SAP at EGOS came into being. But in general, it's one community. And for me, it feels like one community still. So just to make this point, or to underscore this point, which also Madalina and Sarah already made. And yeah, for me as well, other joint events or the connection is the strong membership base with really highly engaged scholars in both communities. Everybody identifies really strongly with the IGs, both at SMS and at AOM, which is really it's something very special, because it's the strong identification. It's not the same in every other IG or division at these conferences. And I would say this is also what makes, because Sarah, you used the term family to describe SAP at SMS, and I would say SAP in general is a family, and also at AOM, because AOM is so big, it's huge. There's 12,000 scholars or so in total. But if you're part of SAP, you always have this SAP home, this SAP family to come to, and it makes AOM manageable and fun for particularly us, for young scholars who maybe are not that connected across other divisions. I think maybe regarding the connection, that were my main points. And regarding the differences, also most points or many points were mentioned by the two of you already. First, of course, I already said that also just a minute ago, AOM is much bigger, which is also, of course, due to the fact that the AOM is the Academy of Management and SMS is about strategy, which is already like a subdivision, let's say, of management. And so for me at AOM, one difference is that, one difference would be that at AOM, I see the community consisting more of scholars. Yeah, so it's more PhD students, postdocs, professors, really the SAP scholars, whereas at SMS we have many more practitioners who are also a core part of the community, and including also consultants. So SMS has a high focus on this ABC, so not only academics, but also practitioners. This, I think, the business and consultant. So that's one difference. And then the other difference, which Madalina mentioned, and which I also hinted at, is that at AOM, SAP is considering or will move towards management as practice, because it's also at the Academy of Management. So here we're increasing also the scope of the research focus. While at SMS, SAP will probably, I would expect, to stay within its origin, so to continuing to focus on strategy as practice. And my assumption would be that as SAP at AOM moves towards MAP, management as practice, the strategy part, so SAP will become more central at SMS, or the other way around, that SAP at SMS will become even more stronger. Exactly. And then for me, the way that I see also maybe one more difference is that I have the impression that traditionally, or at the moment maybe, the SAP at AOM is more a platform that is being used for, or that is useful for early career scholars, where early career scholars can really get engaged. Whereas SMS now as well, but up until, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, at SMS, it was really the senior scholars who were in the chair positions as reps at large, etc. And it's only been a few years that also the more junior scholars have started getting active at SMS. So here it's a conversion towards the connection, that it used to be a difference. And 2 further points regarding the differences: SMS is much more expensive. And at AOM, I have the impression at the moment we organize more out of the conference activities, so generally member engagement activities, than at the SMS. But here I want to highlight that for me, in my capacity now as membership chair at AOM, all these events that we organize, the reading club, the coffee chats, things like this event, for me, it's not, we don't organize these solely for the AOM community, but for the wider SAP community. It's just that the organizing role, or the people who organize it, or where the organizing as such is anchored, is AOM. But generally, it's not targeted only towards AOM. And with this, I would continue to the last question, how we can support each other. And one would be to use synergies more, because there's many things we do similarly in both communities, or that are the same, but we do them twice. So here I think we could join forces much more. Then Madalina, Sarah, you also mentioned the cross advertising. We already do this, so we organize SAP at AOM events, and we advertise them via SMS and vice versa. But of course, we should continue to do this, and we can maybe even do this more. You also mentioned creating more joint events, like this great event. And I really like the point about the joint mentorship program, which has actually been around, or the idea has been around for a while. It hasn't been implemented yet, but I think it would be great to have a general SAP mentorship, or maybe then SAP and MAP mentorship program, but one that goes beyond the conferences. And also the point that Sarah made, I want to expand on this. I think it makes a lot of sense to connect our SAP Global Citizen Program and the Global Ambassador Program that we initiated at the SMS now, because both are about making the community more inclusive. And our community members from Colombia, from South Africa, etc. I think for them, it's also easier to become part of the community and to be engaged actively if they don't have to divide their time between SAP at AOM and SAP at SMS, and maybe there's something going on at EGOS, but if there's one joint SAP global program. So generally, my main takeaway or my last comment would be, I think we should do less in parallel and more together in order to further boost SAP. And the question about the conference attendance, which one I would recommend to attend for a young or first, second year PhD student, it's difficult. I think it depends a lot on the budget. SMS is much more expensive, so oftentimes I think AOM is more affordable. That said, AOM is always in the US, as Sarah also pointed out. So I think my advice would be, if the SMS takes place in Europe, which is the case every second year, I would suggest to attend the SMS. And otherwise also to come to the AOM. Or, I mean, ideally also visit both, because both are great platforms to connect and to meet and to get engaged. Thank you. And now back to you.
Thank you very much, Tania. That was a great overview and very helpful for us to move the conversation forward. Just before we finish the session, I would just conclude and pull together some insights that have been generated in this session here. So apparently, these groups are actually part of one community, which is a wonderful, a great message. One community, different venues where these groups meet and generate their impact in the broader management and strategy community. What we apparently share is a practice perspective on strategy and interest in how strategy is done. We do share some people in the sense that some go to both conferences and enrich both groups. We're all supportive. We all have a strong identification with the SAP group. We love the family spirit. We're ambitious. We share target journals and so on. So a lot of things that we have in common. But what we may not necessarily have in common, and I wouldn't necessarily refer to all of them, but just as some, is that the AOM group seems to have recognized that they do more than strategy. It's not just strategy, but it seems to be management in the broader sense. Whereas the SMS group I would have had questions about it, have a stronger focus on strategy. And practitioners, the relationship to practitioners might also be a different one. So the SMS group, in a sense, has kind of a hybrid identity in that practice doesn't just mean practice in terms of practice theory, but also practitioners. At least the strategy practice IG has the largest number of practitioner members at SMS compared to other IGs. So we shouldn't underestimate that as well. But then we seem to agree that we should use synergies. We should not necessarily develop formats and events in which we simply talk to each other. These events, as far as I understand at least, should be ones in which we join forces, in which we create synergies, in which we basically support our community, reach out to others, and do our activities together. And if we could pull off at least some of those in terms of PDWs and joint socials, joint mentorship, mini conferences around the world, then I think a great step would have been done already to move forward and join forces. So I hope this summarizes some of the main points, some of the key takeaways that we could have. Obviously, it would be nice to continue the conversation. Once connections are established, they can also be maintained. So I hope that we can do so in due course. So thank you very much, Milena, for pulling together this session. Thank you very much for sharing views to our panelists, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining the conversation today. We hope that this session was interesting, enlightening, and hopefully also inspiring as a way to become active in our broader community. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a great rest of the day.